marathon meeting today, 3.5
Yes.
hours. Tell people why we spent 3.5 hours with the county council today.
Well, this is probably the longest meeting in my tenure of being on county council, and a level of it is we have a big county, we have a lot of things going on, and due to the COVID environment, we haven't had our regular meetings. So what that means is when we do have a meeting, things stack up and it is a long agenda. And so we went for about 3.5 hours today here at the Civic Center. Some of the key topics were, we had people who spoke on masks, and that's a divisive topic that, you know, plenty of opinions on. We had also people speaking for and against items with a Confederate statue downtown. From that, we also went into a lot of economic development and our standard first, second, and third readings. But with the mask ordinance, just so to clarify so people know what happened, is a mask ordinance was not taken up today. There was discussion on masks. Some individuals from the hospital came and gave us data on the trends in the state and from DHEC and what had happened here locally, and they gave some data on what they felt was happening with mask ordinances in place as opposed when mask ordinances were not in place. And we also had some individuals talk about, you know, whether or not that was an overreach and if that was something that they did not want to participate in. So, but the bottom line is we didn't take up a mask ordinance today. There was talk of one. There may be one presented at a later date, but it was not taken up today. It was just discussion. The second item was there was nothing on the agenda about removing, changing, or keeping, or altering the Confederate statue downtown. We had a group come speak to us about it formally on the agenda. They wanted to see changes, whether it be with the inscription or where it was located. But once again, there was nothing taken up on that. And the reason nothing was taken up on that is because county council doesn't have the authority to take up anything on that. By state law, Columbia has to address it. And that's a law that's been in place for about 20 years now. If I'm not mistaken, I think it has to get 2/3 of the Senate or 2/3 of the House in Columbia, but that's a state issue, so we have zero authority on it. Now, sometimes people want us to take a position on it, but that's not something that county council has entertained. They basically said you have state representatives, please communicate with them. They're the ones that can take a position on that, and they are elected representatives. So from both of those things, it's just 2 discussion items, no action taken, nothing on the agenda. From there, we went into a series of economic development things. And so there was probably 5 or 10 on the agenda where different groups were doing different projects. And so they were looking for tax incentive agreements. It was partnerships with other counties. This was companies expanding. This was remodeling and revitalization of apartment complexes. So it was a whole host of items that were all favorable and went through. And then we had a lot of discussion on what we call public and planning works items, and this is zoning, this is anything of that nature with land use. We had a bunch of items there. Some of them were taken off the agenda, some of them were passed with the intent of taking them to committee to get more information on them, but all of that was pretty much straightforward. And before we got to the end of the meeting, probably the most important thing that we addressed was the overall budget. And so the overall budget of the county typically is settled before July 1. We run on a July 1 to June 31 fiscal year. So every year that's how we spend the spring. We were unable to do that due to COVID. So we were operating almost what you probably hear on the national level, sort of a continuing resolution. We were keeping the budget from last year and just going with it in an effort to get a new budget. So we've met enough times. The Finance Committee brought forth numbers, and so third reading, we actually officially have a budget moving forward that will go now to June 31 of 2021.
No tax increases and
no tax increases, no service cuts. You probably won't see any real changes as they try to take as much of last year's budget as possible and just keep it moving forward. So all your county services will keep moving seamlessly. And before the end of the meeting, we heard from our Public Safety Committee, and we talked about QRVs, EMS. You know, with everything going on, we want to make sure that that's working correctly and people are getting served. At the end of the meeting, we did some appointments with the Planning Commission. We also did some allocations to some local charities and some nonprofits who are doing some positive things. But by the end of it, we didn't even take commentary from council because I think everybody was pretty worn out, and we just all agreed to adjourn. But it was a jam-packed meeting. But good news is we're going to have our next meeting on Tuesday, December 1st. I anticipate that might be our last meeting of the year. So please plan to attend. There'll be a notice. I assume it'll be at the Civic Center, and most likely it'll be during the day, but that will be coming out in a notice shortly.